Hey everybody, my name is Ryan Jones. I lead the Power App Scale product group here at Microsoft, and I'm going to be at Ignite in Chicago here in a few weeks. We're going to be talking about how you can govern and secure your low-code estate across Power Apps, Power Automate, and Microsoft Copilot Studio, and how you can do that at greater scale than ever before. And also, make sure to tune in to the Low Code Approach podcast. It's where we chat about all the cool things that are going on in the low code space. And so make sure to check it out. Take care, y'all.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of the Low Code Approach. I'm Sean Feeney, a Senior Product Marketing Manager on the Power Platform team. Now usually I pass it off to Wendy, but Wendy's on assignment at the Bacon Eaters Anonymous, which probably doesn't make it anonymous that I just announced that to everybody, which means we have a guest host, and that means I'm joined by
Jocelyn from the Power Platform Dataverse Security team. Hello, everybody. Sorry you have me instead of Wendy. I know it could be a disappointment, but of course, we always have Brother Ken.
Thank you, Jocelyn. And we today are joined by, I guess I should also introduce myself. And for those who don't know me, Ken Aguilar, Principal Program Manager here within Microsoft inside of the Power Platform. And we are joined by the man who will help us to demystify the Temple of Doom, if you will, right? He is not a doctor, but his last name is Jones. Ryan, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, Ken. Thanks so much, everybody. Yeah, my name's Ryan. I lead the Power App Scale team here at Microsoft, focusing on how we help all of our customers, large to small, manage, those 11 billion little apps that exist in their organization. And then all of those really, really big apps that they have serving mission critical purposes in their organization.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Ryan. And I think what I'd like to do is kind of level set for the audience as Ignite is right around the corner at the time of recording. Where do we sit in Power Platform, low code, in the security and governance space? I know there's going to be some great announcements at Ignite, but I just want to make sure that everybody going into Ignite, watching virtually, attending in person, understands where we're at before they see everything at all the breakout sessions and keynotes.
Yeah, I would start by saying, and pardon the cliche, but the state of the security union is strong, okay? The number of capabilities that we have to help our customers secure their low code estate, I think is quite powerful. It's quite compelling. And I don't think that it's just stuff that we're doing within the Power Platform by ourselves. I think it's also how we integrate with the broader ecosystem at Microsoft, right? For example, our deep integration with Entra, formerly known as Azure Active Directory, where we deeply leverage its identity and security capabilities to see to it that users are able to interact with the Power Platform as themselves wherever possible. Beyond that, we have data policies that help folks, control how data flows between different services. We integrate deeply with Azure, connecting to customer VNets or connecting with, customer managed keys for encryption, using the patterns and practices that our customers already have deployed in their usage of Azure. Beyond that, integration with Sentinel and Purview as well. So we can always improve and we're always striving to grow, but I think we have a set of really compelling capabilities that allow any customer to establish a solid security baseline.
Awesome. So, Ryan, I sound like Sean when I said awesome just there. That's usually your word.
That's my
so
go-to.
Yes, it definitely is. So, we've heard customers talking to us about, oh, I hate the default environment, or maybe I have a problem with the default. How are we helping customers address many of their, I guess, very common concerns that they have within the ecosystem, being that it moves so fast and changes so quickly every few 6 months, 12 months, and so on?
Yeah, I think we definitely heard from customers that, they don't love the default environment. And one of the things that I always try to do when, I don't like something or someone tells me they don't like something, I tried to employ this process that was really common with Toyota back in the day called the 5 whys, right? Really try to understand why it is that we're struggling to, in this case, like manage the default environment. And I think what we learned is, of course, because it's so easy for a large number of people to create large numbers of assets within the default environment, the challenge becomes that, like the policies that you define to govern the default environment has to support the needs of every single app, automation, and agent that lives
Yeah.
in the default environment. And so, kind of with that understanding, I feel like that's really shaped our product approach around how we kind of bring what we called environment strategy. I call, just so everybody else knows, I call Ken Mr. Environment Strategy, in addition to Dr. No. The thing is, like, what does it mean for us to help and make environment strategy a part of our product? And the way that that's manifested itself, of course, is with our environment routing capability. The idea being that instead of everybody placing all these users into a single giant environment, we place them in little environments. And the thing is, this isn't a new concept for Power Platform. If we think about Office and Microsoft 365, almost all of us use OneDrive nowadays, right? But the reason that we use OneDrive is because we have a OneDrive that's ours, right? And the thing is, our IT departments have defined security and governance policies that govern how I use my OneDrive. That's very different from if everybody in Microsoft by default saved their documents into the exact same SharePoint site. By having these little personal environments, it allows IT to go through and define more restrictive policies that are tailored to the needs of personal productivity. And it really allows organizations to balance innovation with security and compliance in a way that they couldn't do in the past. And of course, to help them do that, we have capabilities like environment groups and environment rules that allow you to set and define these policies once on the environment group. And then we stamp those settings across each and every environment in that group. So really trying to see to it that you not only have more control, but that you're able to exert that control with less effort.
So Ryan, like really good point about the developer environment strategy with environment routing to help IT kind of lock down the more restrictive developer environments for them. But you brought up a term, personal productivity. And so the developer environments help you build applications for personal productivity. But how can we help makers understand the reach of Power Platform through their personal productivity developer environments to build those enterprise scale applications? Like, how do we help graduate those applications built at kind of like a personal productivity, more locked down scale to enterprise? What's that path for a maker?
Yeah, I think there's a few things here. One is like, how do we upskill our makers so that they can build apps that are just beyond, like Hello World or the 3 screen app? I'll be honest, like that's about where my app building like skills begin and end. I don't know if I've ever built an app. No, I have built a 4 screen app once, and that's because it had a welcome page. Okay. So I'm not the world's most advanced app maker. I'm ashamed to say, but like we have this really cool program called Power Up. And the idea behind that program is to help folks that don't have a traditional developer background, like upskill, so that they can build apps that are more valuable, that are more likely to be good candidates for like broader distribution in the organization. I think the second thing is, how do we help users and kind of control and establish guardrails so that the apps that they build are of sufficient quality to be distributed more broadly? And there, I think we have a few things that are pretty interesting. One is, as I mentioned earlier, our environment rules allow IT to set guardrails that constrain how people build these apps. That's important because if you have somebody that builds an app that it violates a core security policy within your organization, obviously that thing's not going to be able to be like distributed with it. I think the other thing that's interesting is like when we think about the apps that we build, We can build good apps and we can build bad apps, right? Like apps that are slow or unreliable. I have a name for those types of apps. It rhymes with applets, and you can probably infer the rest from there. There's an emoji, I think, that represents that. But, those lousy apps, one of the things that we have is solution checker in our product, an app checker that as you're building your apps, you can go through and say, hey, does this thing like follow the best practices? Also, as that app runs through pipelines, which is our application lifecycle management solution, you can do things like where you warn if that app has violations, or if you want to be like really, like hardcore about it, you can even say, hey, I'm going to like block apps that violate, these rules. And then I think the final thing is like, if we think about how we actually help makers like physically move solutions that they've built from like personal productivity to testing and production environments, we have our simplified ALM solution pipelines, which is designed to help with just that. When I build an app that I'm really proud of, and I get a clean bill of health, I get an A on my solution checker report card, I'm able to submit that deployment, at which point my admin can take a look at it and give like the thumbs up or thumbs down, and then it gets deployed to a production environment where sharing is more broadly allowed. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I think we probably talked before about like the green, yellow, red approach to environment strategy and environment governance. It's like environment routing helps you set up a great green playground, and then pipelines is what helps you ship things out of the green zone very easily and scalably.
Awesome. So, Ryan, I know that Ken might be Mr. Environment Strategy, but I guess I'm now the new mini general of security. So, I'm going to pivot you a little bit here. Leading up into Ignite, while, the digital landscape is changing and everybody has to say it's in the age of AI in order to get some attention on it, what do you think are the top of mind concerns about security, and how do you think we're solving them?
I think that one of the most common concerns that I hear from customers is, how do I protect my data? How do I see to it that my data does not somehow like leave my enterprise and like end up for sale on like the back corners of the internet or something like that, right? And I think, there are a number of interesting controls and capabilities that we have that can help with that. One is, I mentioned earlier, like our deep integration with Entra, formerly Azure Active Directory. Like that is just so foundational to how our platform works, because we're able to start by seeing to it that users only have access to the data that they already have access to. Like that is such a powerful capability. I think the other thing that I talk about almost every time is, folks are concerned, hey, cool. So my user, has access to some data like in SharePoint. How do we see to it that that data doesn't just get, like moved via a workflow or an app, like a random FTP server, once again, like in the dark corners of the internet somewhere. And the thing is, that's why we have data policy. Also, sometimes there are like normal activities that sometimes can be nefarious, right? Like, for example, having a link in your Power App that takes you to, a different website or what have you, very, very common pattern, especially for, like little HR app that helps people find resources that are available to them, and they click the button to like check their 401k balance or something like that. That's a normal behavior. But if there's a link that goes to www.stealmysocialsecuritynumber.com, that's probably a bad thing, right? Or another example is, we've all built an app that didn't work out the way we'd hoped, and we've deleted it, right? Deleting apps, they're having a little app funeral. It's a part of life. If we see all of a sudden someone's going through and deletes 500 apps, that tells us something's probably up, right? And so, of course, like with our integration with Sentinel, Sentinel actually detects those like anomalous patterns, right? And I think that's pretty important. The other thing that we see is customers are always concerned about what type of data is being stored within the Power Platform. And, when we store data inside of the Power Platform, of course, like that's being stored in Dataverse. And Dataverse integrates deeply with Purview so that it can identify, for example, places where you might be storing credit card numbers and you don't want to do that perhaps, or you might be storing, social security numbers or other sensitive information. And the idea behind Purview is it defines that stuff and labels it so that you can decide, hey, is this an app that's in the red zone where it's okay for this to be the case? Or if this is some app in the green zone, it might be time for like some data cleanup. I think the other thing, of course, is like from security perspective, we're always trying to protect data at rest. And so being able to encrypt that data, with my own keys that I store in an Azure Key Vault or HSM, super powerful capability. And then, from a security perspective, we're always trying to like control the network perimeter. And so capabilities like, IP firewall and Azure Virtual Network help me build that same like defense in depth or layered security model that I employ otherwise today. So I think there's a bunch of like goodies that we have that really try to aim at the heart of the security concerns our customers have. Now, also, since I think I've like been answering your question for like 3 minutes already, Jocelyn, like it's almost like, the number of security capabilities we have in the product can almost be a little overwhelming. And and this is something that we've seen with customers as well, right? Like if we say, hey, we have these 3 baseline controls that everybody who's using Power Platform should configure for their organization. We found historically that not that many customers go through and use the tools that are available to secure themselves. And so one of the things that we've done to help with that, of course, is the Security Hub. The idea being that one, we help people more easily discover how secure they are. Two is we tell them what they should go do about it. And three is we bring all that stuff into the same place within the Power Platform Admin Center so that we're able to help customers make use of the security capabilities we already have at the platform. So probably a way longer answer than you were hoping for, Jocelyn. But I mean, that's kind of how I think.
We love to hear all of that.
I don't think the answer was too long, Ryan. Like what you did was maybe tee up the next question for me which is while we were at Power Platform Conference and we were talking about the evolution of the platform and the investments that we were making, I had a customer walk up to me and say, "Hey, I just heard Ryan talk about the intelligent control plane. What is it?" And I was sitting there like, okay, that's a great question. I don't know. Obviously, I explained it. But Ryan, can you tell us what is the intelligent control plane? Because I think, that's a term that we've started using and folks have been asking, what is it and what does it mean for the platform?
Yeah, so I think of the intelligent control plane as mission control for low code. And let me describe what I mean when I say that. Right? Like the first thing is, you remember how like back in the day when we'd see videos of like astronauts going to the moon or like going up in the space shuttle or what have you, there was like, mission control where you had like all the folks sitting behind the computers with headsets on and everything. Unfortunately, we don't have a cool room like that for low code. But we're doing the best that we can. First thing is like that control plane for those missions, it was everywhere, right? It was right in front of each one of those folks that was trying to ensure that the mission was successful. And so I think that's actually a key characteristic of the intelligent control plane from a conceptual perspective. It's not something that only lives in PPAC for admins. It's not something that's only for tenant admins or only for environment admins. It's also something that's there for makers as well, because we believe that providing more control over apps, automations, and agents allows everybody to build cooler and better stuff. I think the second thing is the intelligent control plane has a little bit of sass. It's opinionated, right? Because in the past, we've been like, oh, you could do this, you could do that. Maybe you want to try, using a VNet or IP firewall. Maybe you want to use, these deeper integrations that we have with Okta or what have you. But in this case, the intelligent control plane actually says, hey, you know what? Like, you should actually go do this, right? These are the 3 most important things that you can do right now to make your app faster. These are the three most important things you can do to make your Power Pages site more secure. These are the three things that you could go do to make your Power Automate workflow more reliable. And so it's going to tell you what it thinks you should do. And it's kind of weird because in some ways this starts to blend into like agent territory, right? Where these different aspects of the control plane, whether we're talking about deployment and application lifecycle management, or whether it's monitoring or security or configuration of Gen AI, we have an opinion on how you can best use those capabilities. And we're going to be surfacing more and more of those things to you through both the Power Platform Admin Center as well as through the different maker experiences across the Power Platform. I think the third thing that is really important is that when we look at the people that are in PPAC, when we look at the people who are in the maker experiences, they're there to do very specific things. Someone from the CISO's organization is there to make sure that the platform is properly secured. Someone from the ops team is there to make sure that the apps didn't blow up overnight or that the automations didn't stop working. A maker is there to check to see if the admin approved those deployments that we were talking about earlier. And so what we've really tried to do is focus on the users that interact with the intelligent control plane and what their specific jobs to be done are, so that they have clear, well-defined places within our experiences to accomplish those goals.
So can our customers, I assume, look forward to seeing advancements in making the jobs to be done easier for themselves coming up?
Yes, without a doubt. In fact, this idea around the intelligent control plane is leading us really re-envision and rethink many of our PPAC, Power Platform Admin Center, and our maker experiences. And we'll be showing off all of this stuff here in a few months at Ignite. And so I hope all y'all that are tuning in will be able to join me either in person or online as we talk about that stuff.
So I want to do two things. I want to revisit something that you said earlier and something that you just said together. Before you mentioned like, hey, we've got these governance controls that kind of help level up the maker experience for going from personal productivity to enterprise scale apps. And so you brought up, like, hey, we've got this Power Up program for scaling up makers. How do admins scale up? Like you said, we've got a plethora of security features that are out. We've got new governance stuff that's coming out all the time. What about those admins that are like, hey, man, I want to learn more. I want to be better at this. Stuff's everywhere. What are my options?
Yeah, so I think that one of our major areas of investment more recently has been, in the content that's on learn.microsoft.com. What we found is when we have gaps in our documentation, customers pick up the phone, they write us an email, opening up support cases, asking us these sorts of questions. And while we love helping our customers, I think I'd rather go to the dentist than open a support case. And so one of our goals is then we actually then like analyzing all the questions and the challenges that customers have. And then we've been using that to improve the quality of the content that's on learnmicrosoft.com, because that's actually what we use, the content that we use to power our support co-pilot that's in PPAC, where we try to help answer your questions before you open that support case. And so I think there's that. The other thing, and some of y'all probably know this better than I do, I think we now have some training programs specifically for admins. Do we not?
Yeah, there are. And they're getting revamped.
Awesome. Because I do think it's really important, like the way that you administer the Power Platform back in the day, like circa 2018, is very, very different than the way you administer the Power Platform in 2024. And so, that's actually an interesting thing maybe to dwell on a little bit, is a lot of the questions that I get today. Yes, I have questions from like new folks that are trying to learn how to govern Power Platform for the first time. But a lot of the questions that I get are from big customers that have been with the Power Platform for, 5 years now. And they're saying, wow, there's a completely different way that I can now govern and administer the Power Platform for my organization. How do I get from circa 2018, 2019 to 2024? And what's really cool to see is as folks are able to make that transition, the scale at which our admins are able to empower their organizations is pretty like unbelievable. Within Microsoft, Leanne and her team, there's 5 folks and they manage millions of apps, automations, and agents across, I think it's like 35,000 environments. And they do that with 5 people. Okay.
It's 50,000 now.
Oh, it's 50,000 now. Sorry. My graph is out of date. Ken, you're on it, dude. Thank you. Keeping me honest. I'll take it though. More usage all day, every day. Like another example, I was meeting with a customer that, is in the EU. They have about 60,000 power users. They have 2 admins.
Wow.
We're seeing that, right? Like it's really, really cool to see how, like our team is power up scale, but how these tools that we're building are really helping IT scale, right? It's not just about scaling the technology, it's about scaling your people. Because anybody that's done hiring lately, it's not easy to find good people. So making sure that you're able to help those people do as much as possible and do a great job at it, it's all goodness.
So I want to connect some dots here. I want to bridge what we were talking about with regards to admin education, as well as how there are so many different teams that could be involved in this process. And some of the customers I've spoken to, I've had the opportunities to speak with who we view would be the environment admins. But when I'm talking to them, they tell me, oh, I have to go get approvals from insert some other IT deity that's not in the room with us. So how would you recommend going about best practices for collaboration across the compliance and security and IT and all the various other types of admin teams in your enterprise in order to ensure that your Power Platform administration is indeed scaling to the efficacy that you know is possible?
I think that's an awesome question, Jocelyn. And the first thing I would say is in a lot of those scenarios like you just described, where the folks that are trying to like operate the Power Platform have to like go find some person, it's usually because they're trying to find someone that has like the global admin, like God role in 365, right? And there's like 3 people in the company that have that, and like they don't actually have names. You just, like provide them with a burnt offering and ask them to do things for you. But like, I think that this is actually maybe a place where we can do more on education, because the thing is, we have Power Platform, tenant admin roles that allow organizations to delegate, operations of the Power Platform to their COE. And so I think that's actually like a very important starting point. Y'all probably remember the exact name of that role. I know that I butchered it. But like, I think that's one of the important starting places. I think the next thing is it's like, what does it mean for IT to delegate as much as possible to others, right? And what does it mean for them to proactively configure as much as possible so that they don't have to do it and others don't have to do it? And so, of course, we've had delegated environment admin for a really long time. If we introduced environment groups, you can probably guess at some point we'll have like delegated administration for that as well. But I think that it's all central to this idea of how do you distribute the responsibility and accountability for operating the Power Platform as broadly as possible, and how do you have the right proactive controls in place so that as you delegate, you're able to keep things, on the rails. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. And I think that's great advice to take while you're looking to scale across your organization.
So Ryan, I'd be a little remiss if I didn't ask about the artificial elephant in the room, and that is Copilot. So what are we doing to govern and secure Copilots? That's been a running question, right? So can you maybe talk about some of the investments and advancements that we've made, or allude to some of the things that are maybe coming?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to Copilot and Gen AI in general, I think like an important defining characteristic is that this is an area where innovation is happening faster than we've seen in a long time from a tech perspective, maybe even like the fastest ever. Okay. And so one of the concerns that we hear regularly from customers is, hey, like, I don't understand this thing yet. How do I know what it can and can't do? Like, I mean, basic things like, we don't use Copilot. We don't train it on your data, right? Data doesn't get sent outside of the Microsoft boundary from a compliance perspective for Power Platform. These sorts of like baseline things. So the first thing that we've done is we've actually invested quite a bit in how do we centralize establishing that baseline of knowledge around how Copilot works in the Power Platform and how you can use it. The second thing that we've done is it's constantly changing as well. There are new features going out for Copilot like every day, it seems. And so keeping up with all those new capabilities can be a real challenge. And so what we've also done is we brought that together so that you have one place to understand what's new with Copilot across the Power Platform and Dynamics 365. Now, the next thing is we see that a lot of customers aren't ready for good reason to wake up on a random Tuesday and enable Copilot for 100% of their organization. They want to try it out in, a safe, controlled manner, and then incrementally deploy these capabilities to their organization over time. And so what we have done and what we're continuing to do is to come up with ways that customers can safely deploy and incrementally deploy Copilot capabilities across their organization. And then finally, once folks have gotten Copilot to their organizations, they also want to know, like, hey, is this stuff being used? Is it creating value? Like, what does that look like? And so in those cases, what we've also done is we brought the usage data together across different Copilot capabilities so that people can see all that in one place. And so granted, I know I just like listed off, like a half dozen things or something like that. It wouldn't make sense if all that stuff was sprinkled out all over the place. And so we brought all of those things together within the Copilot hub or the Copilot page within the Power Platform Admin Center so that the individuals that are tasked with rolling out and getting value from generative AI technology have all of those things at their fingertips. It's like their Gen AI, mission control, if you will.
So Ryan, unfortunately, we got to land this plane, as our bacon aficionado Wendy would say. I do have a question for you, though. You mentioned Leanne from Microsoft Digital, and that she has a great story. Do you have any insight on when people might be able to see Leanne again, or maybe chat with Leanne at some point? And she's a former guest. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so Leanne is going to be with us at Ignite, both in the 3-day workshop that Ken and Jocelyn are leading, and then she's also joining us in our governance and security breakout session at Ignite. So if folks want a bit more Leanne, she's going to be at Ignite. So join us in person or virtually, and you'll be able to connect again.
She is great. We've got some new T-shirts with some of her sayings on them. So
yeah. Yeah, if you were at the Power Platform Community Conference, you may have heard some great sayings. Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us. I think what I do want to do is, while you're being recorded, set you up for our next recording that I'd love to have with you, where we talk a little bit about mission critical and what does that mean for Power Platform? Because I think it's a topic we haven't covered and we need to get out a little bit more in front of Power Platform users. So once again, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for giving us a rundown on security and governance at a larger scale. And we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Jocelyn. Take care.